Hey there, and welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show, where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with building cohesive, vision-driven teams. I am Casey Watts, school impact strategist and the host of this show. Now, if you are here, then you inevitably are an instructional leader who wants to make change happen, even when change seems impossible. And you can do that if you have cohesive, vision-driven teams that have done clarity work. They know exactly where they're headed and how they're going to get there. These teams have done identity work, and they've built their self and social awareness skills. And they have done collaboration work, and they know how to move beyond faux collaboration to get to true collaboration where change happens and where people get on board. I'm so excited to bring to you conversations that help you to do exactly that. The work that needs to be done to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode. We're in episode 87, and I am joined with Nathan Wray, who's going to be talking to us about reducing youth substance using a collaborative effort. I'm pumped about this episode. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm excited about it, too. That's an awesome intro. I enjoyed. I was like, you were speaking my language.
Thanks. Well, I feel like it just, sets the tone for the show. Kind of energetic and fun, but, still meaningful with what we talk about.
Yeah.
So, Nathan, I want you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, like who you are, where you are, what your aspirations are, and what you do.
Yeah. So you already heard what my name is. I started as a prevention coordinator, a substance use prevention coordinator in Roane County, Tennessee. That's East Tennessee, just right outside of Knoxville, about 7 years ago. Well, just over 7 years ago. August 27th was my 7th year at the Roane County Anti-Drug Coalition as a prevention coordinator. I'm also a national speaker. I speak on preventing youth substance misuse. I share my story. And then I teach students within that story. I teach them how to laugh. And when I say laugh, that's an acronym. It's love yourself unconditionally, align yourself with positive people, use your gifts and your talents to cope, give yourself encouragement. And if you can do one of those 4 things, you'll have hope for the future. And so that's really what I do. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I've got 4 amazing kids, a wonderful wife of 22 years in October.
Wow.
Almost didn't make it the first year because of my substance use.
Wow.
Young adult. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I know that our show is tonight all about reducing youth substance abuse, but I would really love if we have time, can you give us a version of your story and what got you started on this journey of speaking to kids around the nation?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So at 12 years old, I was sitting in my mom and dad's living room. My dad wasn't saying a single word. That's what he does when he's mad. Like he just stops talking. And my mom was sitting next to him and she was crying and she kept saying over and over again, like, where did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong? As parents, like when our kids do something bad, it's like, what have we done wrong as parents? I had gone to a birthday party earlier in the day. I tried to include myself with the other kids, and I smoked a cigarette. I grew up on Air Force bases, and so moving around a lot, you tried to jump into the mix really quickly. You tried to be cool. You tried to join in what everybody else was doing really quick because you did not want to be that outcast on the Air Force base. And so that's what I did. I jumped in, I smoked a cigarette, I went home, my parents smelt it on me. But the only thing they said to me was, you're grounded for 2 weeks. They could have said, like, Nathan, nicotine-induced changes to the brain are permanent. They could have said, hey, Nathan, nicotine actually changes the part of the brain that's responsible for attention, learning, and memory. They could have even said, hey, Nathan, your grandmother on your dad's side just died of lung cancer from smoking. Why are you doing this? But they didn't say any of that. They just said, you're grounded for 2 weeks, which just told me, like, don't get caught again.
Right.
And so when I was done with my punishment, I went right back to smoking cigarettes, because that one time for me, I was hooked on it.
Wow.
Because nicotine just gave me that rush and that excitement and that high that my brain wanted. And that's what it's doing to kids all over the country today, is it's giving them that rush, and it's creating that dopamine inside of their brain that they're craving so badly, that they could be getting from other things, but they're not. And so that's where I started. And at some point you plateau out with nicotine. And so, you smoke, pack a day, 2 packs a day. By the time I was 13, I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I plateaued out, and I moved to marijuana. I was offered marijuana, so I moved to marijuana at 13. And then at 14, I was offered alcohol for the first time. So I moved to alcohol, because all those other things just weren't enough anymore. And I wanted more. It wanted more and more and more. And then at 15, it really just didn't matter. I would really try anything. I didn't care. I had some adverse childhood experiences that I wasn't dealing with. And so all of those, that whole mixture, the adverse childhood experiences, I didn't understand what a positive childhood experience was. And so when I had one, I didn't appreciate it. And I was dealing with my stress and depression and loneliness with substances, and it wasn't working. And I did that all the way up through my senior year. My senior year of high school, 3 weeks before graduation, I got kicked out of high school because I wasn't going to pass my math class that I needed to pass to get the credits to graduate. And they knew it. And so they came to my math class. My principal came to my math class 3 weeks before graduation and said, hey, you're going home, man. Like, this is it. You're done. And so I didn't graduate high school on time. I ended up getting a high school diploma, thankfully, in summer school. And then I moved around a bunch, trying to follow my dad as he continued his career. I moved around. I met my wife in Nashville, Tennessee, and she didn't really know that I was drinking and smoking marijuana and all that stuff. And then we got married, and then she knew, and she was, oh man, I don't know if I like this guy. Like, I love him, but I don't know if I like him.
Right.
And we ended up having, we had our firstborn child, and he's 21 today. But when he was 3 months old, she told me, you have to make a decision. You can be a husband and a father, or you can go live that life, but you have to make the decision, and that's up to you. And I really, honestly, I didn't make the right decision right off the bat.
Yeah.
Because you don't make good decisions when your brain isn't functioning the way that it should. So I left, and then I called and said, hey, I really need some help, and I would like to come home. And she really walked me through that process. I didn't go to treatment. I didn't really go to meetings at first. And she just, like, helped me through the process of talking, of learning how to communicate, learning how to deal with stress in the proper way. And she still coaches me today, because I'll be honest, 4 kids, 4 kids now. The stress is real, man.
Right.
And she is still my stress coach. She's like, okay, let's think about this. Let's talk about this avenue, and I'm like, oh, thank God she's still here.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, what a story. And so now you are going out and spreading your message from your own real life story with not just, I would say, not just kids. There are probably people in your audiences who are experiencing the same things that either you went through and they're still experiencing them, or they went through those things and never coped with them. So you're really touching a wide range of people when you go out to speak.
Yeah, one of the cool things that my favorite thing about speaking, one of my favorite things about speaking is after the event, when students come up to me, and then even when adults come up to me after the event. And one of the things that I say during my speech is, we're asking the wrong question. Everybody used to ask me, "What's wrong with you, Nathan?" And I really like hit on that over and over and over again. I talk about that, how when I went to the principal's office, he would always say, "What's wrong with you, Nathan?" When I went to class and my teachers would say, "You never turn in your assignments. What's wrong with you?" And when I went to football practice, my coach would say, "We've ran this play 1,000 times and you still get it wrong. What's wrong with you?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really hit on that a lot. And I say, we're asking the wrong questions. As adults, we need to be asking students, "Hey, what happened?"
Mm.
And afterwards, I have adults come up to me, teachers, counselors, principals, and they're like, "I wrote that down. Like, I can't ask that question anymore. Like, I'm right. I have to ask, hey, what happened?"
Yeah.
And get the, like, if I can get the full story or at least a little bit of it, then I can have some empathy and understanding. And what I love about your show is that it's this, like, we're talking about collaborative efforts. If you're going to have any collaborative effort, you have to lead from empathy and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Lead from, like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with society? Why can't we get this right? We
Right.
have to lead from empathy and understanding. So it's
Yeah.
one of my favorite moments is when they come and they're like, "Man, I even say this to my own kids," and I'm like,
Right.
listen, we all say it. We all ask that question, like, "What's wrong with you? Why did you put the dishes in the wrong, drawer or whatever?"
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It just comes out. But
Yeah.
we really, in those moments of like, if a student messes up or they don't turn in their papers or they don't finish their homework or they don't do well on a test, the question should not be, "What's wrong with you?" The question should be, "Hey, what happened?"
Right.
So that we
Right.
can dig in and help them work through whatever they got wrong and help them understand that they aren't the mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the, like, that was the major part that I felt like in high school. I started to feel like I'm the mistake. I'm the problem
Right.
and I don't belong here.
Yeah.
And
There's so much that you are touching on. I mean, so many thoughts are coming to my mind, and I've got to be careful because I can word vomit
I
and take us down a tangent real fast.
know, I know.
One of the questions I was going to ask, and you kind of like you've answered it already a little bit, but I was thinking as you were talking before about your situation and your journey and your experiences. Like, what do you wish adults would have done differently for you? And you said already one of the things is just asking a different question. But what else would you hope that adults would have done differently to change the trajectory of your experiences?
Yeah, what I know now is that if a student has two positive adults in their life that are not related to them, um, they are more likely to get better grades, graduate on time, and go to college.
Mm.
Um, I didn't, at least I don't think that I did. I may have, but I didn't feel like I had two positive adults in my life who would come to me and say, "Hey, Nathan, I think you're confident. I think you're creative, and I think you're courageous." Or, "Hey, Nathan, I know today was tough, but you know what? There's always tomorrow. And why don't you come see me a little bit early tomorrow and maybe we can work through whatever you got wrong today." I didn't feel like I really had that.
Yeah.
And so, even if you are a teacher, if you're a school counselor, whatever it is, one of my favorite things to tell teachers is you can change the environment of your classroom within 3 months, within the first 3 months of the school year, a lot of schools do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think this takes 3.6 seconds, I think. But once that Pledge of Allegiance is over, or once that moment of silence is over, whatever they do in their school to begin the day, you can take 3.6 seconds and have the students repeat after you, I'm confident, I'm capable, I'm courageous.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing is they're getting that from someone. And they need that. Every student needs that, whether they're the best athlete on the field, whether they're the best student, the best band member, the best artist in the school. Every student needs that. And it's that encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I would have had encouragement, the two positive adults. And then I think for me, I wish somebody would have listened to me when I said, I don't learn the same way that other kids learn. Nobody listened. And not even my mom and dad. They didn't listen. They were like, oh, you're fine. You're going to be fine. It's okay. You'll get it. And nobody listened to me. And so if you have students that are saying, or you have kids and you're listening and your kids are telling you, I'm not getting it the same way that the other kids are getting it, something's up.
Mm-hmm.
And take them to see somebody. You don't have to put them on medicine, because there's other things that you can do. Maybe medicine might help. I'm not advocating for that, but what I am saying is that something's off and they need someone to help them go through whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
So those are like the three things that that's a super long answer. Sorry. I'm
No,
long.
it's fantastic because it leads me to my next thought, actually. I want to know your opinion on this, because in my content, like when I'm working with schools to build cohesive, vision-driven teams, we work on primarily three things. And one of those things is identity. And what I have found is that we land in this place of faux collaboration. Like no one really grows up learning true collaboration skills. And we have this assumption that as people move into adulthood, they just magically have the skills. And we say things like, I mean, they're adults, they should know better. But we really don't, because that's not been modeled for us. It's not been explicitly taught. And I think that's the same for, I mean, like as you're talking, I feel like that's recognizable in your story, because you have adults who didn't know, like they grew up in a specific way, in a specific system, and they didn't ever do the work, the identity work, to understand, how do I relate to students? What do I even know about myself? What are my core values and beliefs? What happens to me when I get stressed? What are the tendencies that I have? How can I teach students to be able to manage some of those things in different ways? So I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on that, and if you see that happening in schools and for students and adults.
Yeah, identity is huge, and you're right. They didn't know how to do any of that, and I think that some of that still exists today. And identity is such a huge thing today in our schools, because if you cannot relate to a student in your classroom, in your hallway, in your gym, in your band room, whatever it is, if you cannot relate to them in some way, their identity starts to shrink. I'm not important. They can relate to other students, but they can't relate to me, so I must not be important. And who am I now? If I'm not important, then what do I need to change about me? If they're not seeing me, what do I need to change about me?
Yeah.
And it's so easy. I will tell you that I can go stand. I'm so lucky in our community, because I can go to any school that I want to, walk into the office and say, I just want to fist bump students this morning as they come into school, and they're like, yeah, go for it. And so I will do that, and I'll fist bump students as they're walking in the school. And my favorite thing to do is to find a student with glasses, and I'll go, I love your glasses. Those are awesome. And they're like, really?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. I'm like, do you want to trade? Like, can I have your frames? And they're like, no, these are mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that identity starts to come out. Like, I got these frames because I like the way they looked on my face, or I got these frames because my favorite band member has these same frames, and they start to talk about why they got those frames.
Yeah.
I love to do that. And that's one of the things that I learned. I'm so thankful about being an Air Force brat is I learned how to connect with people really fast
Mhm.
based on what they wear, what they ride, how they talk. Like I learned to connect really, really quick with people. And so if you're wearing a Washington Huskies shirt, I'm going to ask you, like, tell me about the Washington Huskies. What do you like about them? Who's your favorite player? Oh, yeah, I love that guy too. We have to connect with kids.
Oh,
They are
sorry.
wearing. Well, you're good. You're good.
Mute
Um,
myself.
what kind of dog do you have?
I've got 2 months actually, and as soon as someone walks into the house, it's like we're gonna go crazy because
Yes.
nobody ever walks into the house, you
Yeah.
know. Anyway,
This is
sorry
all
about
new. It's all new.
that. Yeah,
It's great. I love it. Um, but yeah, I mean, kids are wearing their identities on their sleeves,
yeah,
and and if you want to collaborate with other educators, one of my favorite things is I had one teacher in high school that all the my freshman year, all the notes on my like report cards at the end of the year said should probably take the GED route. Like that's what a lot of teachers like should probably drop out and get his GED. But I had one teacher my sophomore year call my mom and dad and say, "What is Nathan like? What's his favorite thing? What does he like to do? What are his hobbies?" When
yeah,
I walked into her classroom, she had Chicago Cubs posters, Michael Jordan posters, and I was like, "Who is this lady?" And the whole year we talked about that stuff. The only class that I passed was that one.
hmm,
That's a collaborative effort. She took all those notes and went, "They just don't know him."
yeah,
And then went to my parents and said, "How do I get to know him?" And they were
yeah.
like, "Here's everything that he loves." So it's, I mean, I don't even know if I'm answering your question the right way, but
Yeah. Oh,
um
100%. I
yeah.
actually was thinking, Nathan, earlier you talked about it takes like just two people, right? Like two
Mhm.
positive influences outside of family and friends. And it makes me think about our schools and how we think we have collaborative environments, which that's a whole other story that I won't get into it. But we think
Right.
we have collaborative environments around like learning instructional practices for students, going over the data, are going over the curriculum, making sure we have our lesson plans done, and that's necessary. But if we don't make student identity and relationships the main thing, then all of that other stuff goes out the wash. And
Right.
I imagine it would be so powerful if at the beginning of the year and throughout the school year, when we have those planning meetings or we have faculty meetings, whatever kind of collaborative time it might be, if instead of placing focus on instruction and curriculum and assessments, what if we spent a chunk of that time talking about how are we connecting with these students? What are we noticing about this student, this student, this student? And what are you noticing about yourself when you react to that student? What's been a
Yes.
struggle for you and what do you want to practice? That would be so influential for the students in our schools and for our educators. Like imagine how much more uplifting that would be than cramming all of these thoughts and ideas about curriculum into our brains, going back, trying to regurgitate it, and then getting frustrated when we can't because we're experiencing behavior issues. It's just so there are so many things that we have to think about, but we have to
Yeah.
make that a main thing.
If you if you have a student with behavior issues, if you go back in their record and track it down to where it began, you can get to where it began and look at that student's life and say, what happened this year in their life?
Mm.
Oh man, did mom pass away? Did grandpa pass away? Was there a major medical event? Was there did they just move here that year? Something happened in that year that changed that child's behavior. And the child is reacting to the event, not to your instruction, not to your educational abilities, not to your degree. They're reacting to their event.
Mm.
And I read some of your questions. There's a question I think you're gonna ask me, and so I'm gonna wait to talk about it. But if you can go back in a student's record, if you see that their grades have dropped, you've got the kid that gets all F's, he gets all D's, and he walks into your class, and you're like, oh, great, I got this kid. If you change that mindset to, what's up, dude? I believe in you. We're going to get through this school year. Hey, let me know if you have any questions right off the bat. This is going to be your best grade. This class is going to be, if every teacher did that, that student's going to be like, holy cow.
Yeah.
They kind of believe in me.
Yeah.
Like if teachers would have done that for me, every class that I walked into, teachers are like, oh gosh,
This kid again.
This kid. Didn't we have this last year? Like, I sure did.
Yeah. Yeah. And next year and the year after that too, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just change the mindset. And then that collaborative effort of going back in that record. And if it's third grade, go to the third grade teacher and say, hey, I know you don't remember every kid, but we probably remember this kid. This is the behaviors. You wrote all this stuff about their behaviors. Do you know what happened that year? And if you can't get answers from that teacher, there's other teachers in that school that know what's going on in that community. And they can be like, oh yeah, let me tell you. I'll tell you what happened.
Right.
And then you can be like, okay, so now we can address that adverse childhood experience with positive childhood experiences.
Yeah. Okay. So the other day, I've been working in some classrooms at the start of the school year. I'm in classrooms quite a bit, supporting teachers and new teachers and things. And so I was co-teaching, and there was a student who was a struggle. Well, that student really became the conversation piece for a lot of passerby conversations with other teachers who had also experienced that student. And later on in the day, I don't know what made me start thinking about this, but we didn't really have there weren't any positive comments about the students. It was just, man, this is a struggle. Oh, here's the situation. Let me tell you the story that happened today. Let's, drink some tea while we're talking about this, and get all the faces going because we're getting all riled up about it. But adults and students alike, I think, we bond over those negative experiences because we want to connect with someone who has empathy. But again, I don't know that we have learned, like, I'm not saying teachers are at fault for some of the things that we're talking about. They are not. It's the way that the system has been set up. And it really and truly is up to instructional leadership to start to change that path and create these mastery experiences where we can have we're going to have conversations about those negative situations, but we have to be ready to shift the narrative.
Yes. What I didn't realize as a kid was how burnt out some of my teachers were.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it. And I didn't know what they had going on in their lives. A lot of our teachers are stressed and are overwhelmed and severely, severely underpaid. Mm-hmm. I had no idea as a kid. And a lot of our kids don't know that either. But on the flip side of that, we do tend to love the drama. It's everywhere. I mean, we watch TV shows that are full of drama, and then we like to talk about that tea, and so when students have drama, oh man, let me tell you, and then the eye rolls, we take our glasses off, we shut the door, and all of a sudden that student who we could have helped in the first 5 minutes of that conversation has now become the black sheep of the school, and we don't want anything to do with that student.
Mm-hmm.
And you're so right. We have to shift the narrative, and it's going to take someone to stop that conversation and go, wait a second. They have so much potential.
Yeah.
Their brain isn't fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
How can we inspire them to be better? What can we do as a team sitting around this table? What's one positive thing that we can say about that student? Let's go round table right now.
Yeah.
Somebody has to speak up in those situations,
Right.
and start those conversations. Just like when we say, hey, if you see a kid sitting alone at lunch, go sit with them. Like, be the good kid and be the positive, kind person and go sit with them. We need to be those positive, kind adults and start those conversations and say, wait a second, what's one positive thing that we can say about that student?
Right. Yeah. Someone said to me one day, she was a teacher, and she was kind of pushing back on some things that people were saying. And she said, I feel like I'm kind of seeing paper right now, and it's uncomfortable. I said, every campus needs at least one piece of sandpaper.
Yeah.
You have to have the sandpaper to smooth out the edges.
Yeah.
So I've got this list of questions. I don't know that I've asked you any of the questions that I have, which is typical. Like, I don't know why I even write the questions, but I do. So what is the question that you were thinking I was going to ask you? Why don't you just tell us that question? Do you know what it is?
It was something around the effects of what's a collaborative effort that you've, I don't know, been supportive, or I'm trying to remember what it was.
Is it this one? Sharing an example of successful collaborative effort that led to a positive outcome in substance use prevention?
Yes, that's the one. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Does your school system have Handle with Care?
No.
Okay. So we didn't either. And what Handle with Care is Handle with Care is a system where if a student has an event outside of school where police, ambulance, fire, emergency room, anybody like that is called, or they're involved with them, all of those different departments are trained to identify that student. They ask the student, what grade are you in? What school do you go to? Once they find that out, they scan a QR code in their car. They fill out a small report. That goes straight to that student's school. And the only thing that school gets is the name of that student, the grade of that student, and Handle with Care. There's no T, nothing. And the system that's built in place is observational. So when this student comes to school, we just observe. We just watch. If the student integrates right back into school and they're doing great, we're here. We're going to support them. We're not going to ask them what happened. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to approach them. We're just going to observe and watch. If they have behavior issues, we might escalate that to, you know what? I know I'm not going to tell you this, but I know that student was Handled with Care until 3 a.m. at the emergency room. So I'm going to send them to the nurse, and I'm going to tell the nurse, let them lay down for 45 minutes and take a nap. Maybe that will change the behavior. Or if you have a sensory room, I'm going to send them to the sensory room, let them get out some of that frustration, or send them the counselor and let them talk about what happened. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know what happened, but let them go to the counselor and talk about what happened, or the principal or whoever. So you go to that level. If that level doesn't work, and you have someone in your school who is like we have behavioral health liaisons in our school. I don't know if you guys have those, but we'll escalate it to the behavioral health liaison. And then if that doesn't work, that liaison can call the family and say, hey, I think we need to make a referral to some mental health services. Mm-hmm. So that whole system is built in place, Handle with Care. So we implemented that system. We kind of put the cart before the horse. So all of our county participates in that system. But the greatest collaborative effort was yet to come. I think this is my favorite thing. So last year, our community is very rich in resources. We have senior resources, adult resources, children resources, teen resources. We have so many food resources, free health, free medical services. Like, we have it all. We're a very small community. We just have a lot of resources. So when the federal government was suing the opioid companies, they passed all that money down to the states, and then the state of Tennessee passed it down to the counties. They divvied it up and said, here's how much you get and here's how much you get. Our county executive, or our county mayor, said, all the resources, you all come together as the Opioid Abatement Council, and you're going to decide what to do with this money. We're not going to let just anybody decide. You all decide what you're going to do with this money. So we decided that it was going to be prevention, intervention, and connection. And so we had all these conversations going. We created 3 jobs out of this Opioid Abatement Council. The one job was a community resource navigator. That was connection. So if you didn't know where to go for food, you didn't know where to go for health services, this is our community resource navigator. Their whole job is to just spend time in the community, going to the places where people who may need resources are. And their job is to just say, what kind of resources do you need? Health, here's where you go. Food, here's where you go. School, here's where you go. That's their job. The second job that we created was a recovery navigator right inside of our emergency room. So if anybody has an overdose, that recovery navigator walks right into that emergency room and says, here are several treatment options. We're not going to talk about those right now. I just want to make sure that you're okay and that you have everything that you need and that you know that you're loved. That's their job. Once they connect with that person who's had an overdose, then they talk about treatment services. They don't have to accept them. It's just the option that's there. The third job is our trauma-informed school specialist. They're in the school. They're in charge of handle with care inside of the school. They also are, they're in charge of training all of our schools to become trauma-informed schools. So how is this all collaborative? The resource navigator, the recovery navigator, and the trauma-informed school specialist, and myself, I'm lucky to be a part of this little triangle, and myself, we have meetings every 90 days. And sometimes we have to have them before that, because everything that we do is connected.
Yeah.
So if community resource navigator has an interaction with a lady named, let's just say, Samantha. She meets Samantha. Samantha has 2 kids. These kids go to school at one of the elementary schools. Perfect. Hey, you know what? Trauma-informed school specialist, you need to know that I talked with Samantha today and she has 2 kids. Yeah. Awesome. I've got it. Everything's good. Way to go. Cool. Samantha, unfortunately, had an overdose and ended up in the emergency room. And when our recovery navigator pulls up her computer, she sees that Samantha's already had an interaction with our resource navigator, and that our trauma-informed school specialist already knows about the 2 kids. Nobody has to send a handle with care notice, because it's already been done, because our trauma-informed school specialist is already on it, because it's already entered into the computer that Samantha is in the hospital because of an overdose. And now, what services do we need to offer those kids? Not just Samantha, but the kids.
Yeah.
And we have this whole list of resources.
Yeah.
We've got mental health services. We have dental services. We have optical services. We have it all. Food service, we have it all. Everything that you could ever imagine in your community, we have it.
Yeah.
And so that is what I believe is the greatest collaborative effort that I have seen, because these kids aren't getting missed. What we've done is we've created this net
Yep.
to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. And if they fall through a crack, we're catching them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my absolute favorite thing.
I love that so much. So what I want to challenge our audience to think about is, in that situation that Nathan just described, and that collaborative effort, we can mimic that in our schools. We absolutely can, in our communities too. So you may be thinking about how some of these things could be implemented in your own community. If you feel like you are like really successful with your school, what is it in the community that you could do to build collaboration around supporting our students and families that are, in these tough situations?
Yeah. And if you don't have Handle with Care, please reach out to me. I would love to get you connected, and get that system started in your community, because it's helping our kids. It reduces trauma.
Mhm.
That is the greatest thing that we can do for the kids when they have those traumatic events. If we can reduce that trauma in the immediate, if an officer goes to that event and the kids are being removed from the home, but that officer is like, "Hey, buddy, do you want to play my Game Boy for a little bit, or do you want to play my PSP, or you want to play my phone for a little bit?" That reduces the trauma for that child.
Yeah.
And that's huge. It's huge. But a lot of times when our officers go to an event, they're not focused on the kids. They're focused on getting everything else wrapped up. And I get it. The Handle with Care system just trains them to just a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes. Okay, Officer Dave, you got all this wrapped up. I'm going to go talk with the kids for a second.
Yep.
That's all that it is.
Yeah, and everything that you've talked about it takes a very minimal amount of time. Like, we're talking seconds, maybe minutes,
Yep.
Simple things that really, if you walk away from today's conversation, you're thinking, what is just one thing I can implement? Spend a couple of minutes every day just implementing that one thing.
Yep. And if there's one thing that you can implement today without taking any extra time, you don't have to take 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. You don't have to take any extra time for this. Stop caring who gets the credit and start working on collaboration. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Somebody else can have the awards. I don't care. I want the kids to be okay.
Yep. Collaboration over competition any day.
Any day.
Any day.
Any day.
I have loved this conversation so much, Nathan. I feel like we could
Me too.
So I want you to tell our audience what your final word to them is. What do you hope they take away from this conversation, and where can they find you?
Okay. So what to take away from this? Will you do something with me really quick? Because I just want to show them, okay? Change is possible. All right. So I'm going to ask you to make a change really quick. Change takes an open mind and a collaborative effort, right? So if you're going to change, you have to be open-minded about it. So I'm going to ask you to be open-minded. So if you will take your hands and interlace your fingers to where one thumb is on top of the other one.
Okay.
Great. Is that your normal way of doing it?
I think so, because I just did it.
Okay. All right. So thank you for being open-minded and cooperative. That's what change is. It's being open-minded and cooperative. If we're going to change anything, we've got to be open-minded and cooperative. But we have to be concentrated and deliberate about change. If change is going to last, we have to be concentrated and deliberate. So if you're going to change anything in your school system, be open-minded, cooperative, great. But you've got to be in it for the long haul, right? You've got to put in the work. It's not going to happen overnight. You've got to know that this is going to take concentration. This is going to take effort. It's going to be deliberate. So I'm going to ask you to make one more change, Casey. Okay. We're going to change the show name to Changing with Casey. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to take your hands back out. And I need you to interlace your fingers differently to where the opposite thumb ends up on top.
I did it.
Doesn't that feel weird?
It does. It feels so weird.
It feels so weird. That's because change does. You can take your hands out.
Okay.
Change feels weird and it feels awkward and it never feels right at first. But if you were to do this is my opposite way. If you were to do this 1,000 times a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, do you see how easy I'm doing this?
Yeah.
This is my opposite way because I do this all the time. I've done this 1,000 days, 1,000 times a day, 365 days a year. This is not my normal way of doing this. This is my opposite way. But if you did this every day, 1,000 times a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, eventually this would become your normal way of doing it. So when I ask you to interlace your fingers together, you would go like this, the opposite way, because you've put in the effort, the deliberate effort and the concentrated effort to make a change. Any change you're going to make in your schools is going to take a deliberate and a concentrated effort. If you're going to encourage students, it's going to be a deliberate and concentrated effort. If you're going to collaborate, deliberate and concentrated effort. Trust me, I get it. Collaborating with people is not easy. We all have that person that we see that we're like, oh gosh, here they come. We all have that person. I get it. It's not easy, but if you put in the work, it gets easier and easier and easier every time you do it. Change is hard, but change is possible. And I know that because 3 weeks ago, I sat down at my dinner table and my wife said, will you say grace? And I went, sure. And my hands went together the opposite way of my normal way. This kind of feels weird to me now.
Yeah, that's so funny.
This feels normal because there's been deliberate and concentrated effort. So change is possible. It's going to take work. So that's my final message to your audience. Where you can find me, NathanWraySpeaks.com. You can find me on Instagram at @ThatNathanWray. I'm on TikTok sometimes. It's the same thing at @ThatNathanWray. I don't spend much time on there. Otherwise, I'll be doom scrolling all night, and I don't want to do that. But those are the two places, really the 3 places you can find me. And I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. And audience, you will see all of his information in the show notes. I will put those on YouTube and you'll see it on the podcast platforms that you go to as well. Nathan, thank you so much for this evening.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Right. It's been awesome. Thank you. I've had a blast. This has been awesome. Perfect. We need to do it again. Let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll just put it on the books already.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, guys. We will catch you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey there. Thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends and those leaders who are eager to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.